Okay, good morning. This is Richard Hsu, host of Hsu Untied. This morning, I'm very pleased to have with me as my guest Raj Rana, who's a partner at Selendy Gay. Raj, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So, Raj, why don't you start by telling me why you went to law school in the first place?
I think for a number of reasons. So I grew up in India. My parents are both lawyers.
Ah,
So I grew up with a family, of lawyers. My mom is a lawyer, trial lawyer, and she went to law school in 1980s in India. And she has been, you can imagine what it was and still is a really tough place for a woman to do trial law, not just corporate law. So is my dad is a very well-known criminal lawyer. So I grew up being told, not thinking that I do this, as you can imagine, with a lot of Asian families that we are just told what the parents say. And I was determined not to become a lawyer, to be honest. I
oh,
wanted to be an
interesting.
engineer and I wanted to be a doctor, but my path was I wanted to do public service. I wanted to be a civil servant in India. Do public service and work for the government because India inherited this British system of Indian Administrative Service, which is a really difficult exam. You get in and you become a commissioner of a city and you basically spend your life dedicating to public service. Um, but over the years, I think when I finished my high school, that mindset changed and I realized that I can do the practice of law and also do public service. Though that commitment of public service and practicing law was kind of missing in at least in India.
Hmm.
And in India, the practice of law is limited to people who are not lawyers, are not doctors or engineers. So if you're not smart, you become a lawyer. So, but I was very fortunate to have the parents who supported the decision, and I ended up in law school in Bangalore, which was a very transformative experience because when I was growing up in a small middle class family in India, in North India, the world to me was limited to my city. I had no idea that there was even South India or I could live, what it means to be outside my state, what is my identity. And when I went to my law school in Bangalore, which is one of the best in India and still is, they take 57 students a year after like an all India exam.
Wow.
And that was a transformative experience for me because it really made me identify myself and my identity and it just changed the person who I am, and I think that's the law school that made me the person I am today,
Yeah.
because it was a combination of arts and law. But I think that law school convinced me so in the end that I should practice law, that if you practice law you can do public service law
Hmm.
and also do commercial law as opposed to just doing public service, a very different line. So that's what inspired me. And honestly, I wanted to do law, to do human rights work. If you look back at my history in law school, I spent a lot of time doing public interest work. I worked in Sri Lanka. I worked in a number of developing countries doing this.
Hmm.
And after law school, I spent time in Africa for the UN, for the War Crime Tribunal.
Hmm.
Uh, but primarily that was the driving force to
Interesting.
a very short answer.
Well, when did you decide you also have a law degree from in the United States, right? So where did that come into the equation? Was that right after India, or did you work in India for a while and then decide to come to the United States?
I never practiced law in India. I
I see.
finished law school, went to Tanzania for the UN.
Oh,
And
interesting.
when I worked at the UN, I realized this is something I do not want to do, work for the UN, because it was not something that was based on, at that time, very merit-based. There were a number of other factors that played in. So I wanted to pursue further studies, and for me it was that if I want to be the person I am, I don't think I could be my true self if I was in India.
Hmm.
And I wanted to be in a place which, you grew up in India thinking about the American dream, watch all the Hollywood movies and look at New York City, and this is what you want to do. And then I ended up coming to Stanford Law School, where I was very fortunate to have two professors, Lawrence Friedman and Helen Stacy, who I think were I still stay in touch with them, and they just changed my life because
Hmm.
they told me that if I want to litigate in the United States and be a disputes lawyer, I should strongly consider doing JD.
Hmm.
And I ended up at UVA, got a scholarship. I ended up at UVA, and rest is history. So I think
Wow. So you actually kind of went to you have three law degrees in some sense, right? Because you did the India, then you got the LLM from Stanford, and then you went back and got a JD. So when you went to the JD, didn't you feel like I already know all this stuff?
that was a constant reminder, at least in one year, it was a constant reminder when you go to like the classes. But I think the American law school education for the JD program is very different
Huh.
uh, than the education you can think about in other countries, probably. I can only speak for India. But yes, it was a common theme in my
Yeah.
mind that, I'm studying the same stuff I've done. I was much older. I was not too old, but I think it was a mindset. Like, at least when you go to US law school, a lot of students have PhDs and masters. So I think that was the initial hunch and I got over it. But yes, it was a constant reminder that I've done this.
Yeah, yeah.
In a way, it was a very humbling experience. In a way, it was a great experience to make lifelong friends.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
and it's also a great experience to break into the American sense of humor and the culture. So
Well,
in
I'm guessing you aced it though. I'm guessing you you probably did pretty well.
I think I did fine. I would say it was very challenging. I think as a international student, law schools can in the US can be very intimidating.
I see, I see.
So I think I did okay, but I think when you know you have you you work really hard, you're doing part-time job to sustain yourself in law school. So it was a lot of pressure. As I said, I think in hindsight, I think it was the best decision I made.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well,
A lot
when you went to law school, you mentioned that you went there because you wanted to be a litigator. Did you know what kind of litigator you wanted to be?
So when I went to law school, I knew I wanted to do the trial law stuff. I never heard the word arbitration in law school.
Mm.
I never took a single class in arbitration in law school. So arbitration to me, which is now my bread and butter, is
Mm.
not something that I imagined going into law school. I wanted to do complex litigation and do trial stuff in the US. And I thought that the best and the most complex litigations happen in New York City. And
Mm.
I think I was right. And that's the main reason that I decided to go into litigation.
And so what kind of litigation did you do then?
I do very, complex commercial litigation work. And at least right now, I also do a lot of arbitration work.
Hmm.
And I can tell you in a second how I stumbled upon arbitration in my career.
Yeah, please.
So I grew up at Quinn Emanuel after law school. I thought I would retire with the Quinn T-shirt. Um, I loved everything, and I think look, it's not the firm, it's the people you work with who define, who can make who you are, who can also break who you are. And I think I was extremely lucky that at Quinn Emanuel I got some of the best mentors I could ask for.
Mm.
Catherine Sullivan, who is the Sullivan of Quinn Emanuel, was my mentor at Quinn, and Dan Cunningham, who just recently passed away, um,
Mm.
was my mentor and who worked me to death. But on Fridays he would take my phone and say, "Go have fun and come on Monday. Don't worry about any emails." But those things really make a huge impact. Um, so I think that's how I initially started doing litigation at Quinn, and I do that kind of work. And then right now we do a combination of complex litigation and public interest work. So our firm has a very strong portfolio of public interest work, which is one of the big commitments of the firm. So it's a really fun practice where I can combine my passion for public service and do public interest work, and also commercial litigation.
Well, tell me how you got into arbitration. You were going to talk about that, but you didn't mention how
Yes.
that became an
Yes.
integral part of your practice.
Yeah, so when I was at Quinn Emanuel, I got a call from a lawyer who came from India for a conference in DC. And he said, I have a very interesting client who has an investment in Uzbekistan, and he wants to figure out if there's a way he can sue Uzbekistan. And I was like, why would you sue Uzbekistan and why would you need me or a US law firm, go to Uzbekistan firm.
Mhm.
And that's when I stumbled upon international arbitration, because there's investment treaty arbitration, and this guy ended up suing Uzbekistan. So that was the first experience when I was a fourth-year associate. I self-taught myself investment treaty arbitration,
Wow.
and I thought, this is it. I found it. This is something I
Hmm.
truly feel excited about, because even in law school, I love choice of law issues. Civil procedure was like the big civil procedure geek, but I think this is a practice which is very comparative study. So if you like comparative law, like, and also since I worked in different jurisdictions, I really enjoy studying civil law, common law, and when I worked in Sri Lanka, or I've spent time in China. So all those really interesting experiences, I think, all combined into this practice where I was suddenly studying Uzbek law
Hmm.
and international law and Europe. So I think that really was a very exciting, challenging opportunity for me. And you work with people who are all different. So I feel like in international arbitration, when you go to a hearing, everyone from your opposing counsel to your team members to the tribunal members, we're all a diverse group.
Yeah, yeah.
And during
Interesting.
trial in the US, it's they all speak differently. So I feel like it was a home to me. I feel
Hmm.
like I
Hmm.
belong in this
Hmm.
practice. I didn't have to feel uncomfortable about the way I speak or look. Uh,
Mhm.
and I loved what I did on the case, and I
Interesting.
thought, this is it. And that was my career, and it still is.
So at this point, is arbitration 100% of what you do, or you still do some regular complex commercial litigation?
So I do both. So I do regular complex commercial litigation, and do arbitration. So, and in arbitration itself, it's commercial arbitration and treaty
Yeah, yeah,
arbitrations.
yeah, yeah.
So
But is the mix like 50-50, or is it like 80-20, or?
it's a mix. And also in my firm, we don't have like other big firms where you have practice groups. We are a small partnership. We're 17 partners and 60 associates. And we want to be disputes lawyer first. So no matter what type of dispute comes,
Yeah, yeah,
so we don't really have like, we have a preference, but we don't have like a title or a practice group.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah, yeah.
that really makes it fun. So I can jump on any case I want or anything. So
Yeah. If you had your druthers, would you like to do 100% arbitration, or you really like that mix?
I really like the mix. I think in arbitration, by the time you get your stand-up experience, you get to talk with the tribunal. It's like, 2 years into the arbitration when you're
Yeah,
done all
yeah,
the briefing. I really enjoy litigation, and because, at Quinn was fantastic that way, but at least here too, you get to do depositions, you get to go to the court. It's more spontaneous that way. So
yeah,
I think
yeah, yeah.
if you're someone who likes stand-up experience, and if you want to be creative, and I think litigation is a really fun way to combine both with arbitration as
Yeah,
well.
yeah. Now I
Yeah.
see that you recently joined your firm, Selendy Gay, and I think, as I mentioned to you in the outset, you're the first guest I've had that's from the firm. So tell me a little bit about how you found this opportunity and what made you decide to go there.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think I will start by saying I have known Faith Gay and Philippe Selendy since I was at Quinn. When I was growing up at Quinn, I worked on matters with Philippe Selendy most of my time. I worked
Mm.
on all the structured finance litigation after the housing crisis, when all the Wall Street banks were sued. And Philippe was the most brilliant lawyer I ever worked with in my life. In fact, when I saw how he created those claims, and he was so creative, um, honestly, when I was practicing law at a different firm, he was always my role model. That, okay, how smart of him to come up with this interesting theory, interesting claims, and build his practice,
Mm.
which was something that always inspired me to build your practice, to bring new claims, and to be creative and find new solutions for your clients, right? And so when I made partner in a prior firm, I got a call from Faith Gay asking if I would be interested in having a drink with her. And I thought Faith Gay probably never calls anyone just to have a drink. So there must be something going on. And I was like, maybe it's just a BD meeting, so maybe just go. And so that's when they asked me if I would be open to transitioning here. And I was super excited, because the idea of working as a partner with Philippe and Fabe, and and this collection of lawyers they have from Quinn Emanuel, and we only did lateral hires last year and this year, 3 lateral partners. We didn't really do lateral hiring that much, so it was a very exciting opportunity for me to offer a smaller platform which is really focused on top quality and very collegial firm. One big distinction is in my firm, there's no like origination credit fight or issue. We have no origination credit, which as you know, in other firms, there is always an issue about credit. So I feel like as that really pushes collegiality and collaboration with partnership. So when any matter comes in, we all together find a solution for our clients. And I think which gives me the basis to go to a new client and say, hey, we come up with new solutions, because it's not just me coming up with new solutions, it's all 17 of us, thinking across the 360-degree view of how we can present the solution. So and that was an exciting opportunity for me. And I've been here now 11 months. It's been absolutely ridiculously fun. So I'm really
Well, and it sounds like you got a chance to go back to Quinn in a way.
Yep, you can say that. I think we're quite a smaller, but much better culture, much better talent, and it's because you're small and selective. So yeah, exactly. I feel like I'm back to Quinn, better.
Well, you're obviously got a long career ahead of you, but do you ever see yourself doing anything else at some point in the future? Would you ever become an arbitrator yourself or something like that many years down the line? What do you see for the future of Raj Rana?
So I think I don't know if I would. I think every person who does arbitration has a vision that when they hit 65, this is their retirement plan. Do you do arbitrator work? So I'm not going to say no, so that it's not held against me later down the line. But I do enjoy client advocacy work. I truly feel like that's the one that that pushes me to get out of the bed in the morning, something that I'm excited about. Sometimes too excited, but I feel like my clients feel like I'm a little too excited and passionate more than they are about their own cases sometimes. But I think my future vision is I really believe in paying it forward. I think my upbringing and where I come from has really shaped my vision of how I want the future to be. I think I'm extremely grateful where I come from. I think spending time in Africa was even more humbling than growing up in India. Because when you grow up in India, you always look at when you travel to London or you travel to Canada, you always come home and you're like, gosh, I don't have this. I wish I could have this life. And when I went to Africa, it was an eye-opening experience to me. And I felt like even India is so many years ahead, and there's a whole world which I never imagined. So I think part of my vision in the future is to really pay it forward. So I'm trying to get involved. I'm on the board of American Indian Foundation, the Tri-State Board in New York. I am on the founding circles member of a group of Indian Americans around the world called Indiaspora. So we try to do good for the Indian businesses globally. And so that's my hope, and I'm hoping more and more I go up the ladder, I can do that. So I think that definitely, it makes me, you always have to feel grounded to your roots. So I think that's my hope.
What do your parents think about the legal career you forged for yourself?
Depends which one of them you ask. My dad is very happy. He doesn't care. My mom is like a very, tiger mom. She's like, you should have 3 more jobs, like parallel jobs. And I was like, she just told me last week, she was like, I think you should have 3 more multiple sources of income. You should write a book. And I'm like, wow. So it's like, sure. So I think if you ask my mom, and I think I'm so grateful to her, because when I was growing up, I'll get up at 6 in the morning to study, and my mom will knock on the door at 4 in the morning. And she would like get up, and I was like, and she will be up with me, she'll be in the kitchen making me food and breakfast. She'll be like, there are a billion of us. While you're sleeping this extra 2 hours, there's someone else out there who's working harder than you. So get up and get to work. And and I look back at all of that, I think my mom really pushed us hard, and I feel like you know, in the end, it all worked out. I'm not saying if everyone's mom does that, every kid is going to be successful. That's not what I'm saying.
Mhm.
I'm
Yeah.
saying it's
Yeah.
coming back to your question. I think it depends who you ask. I'm positive if you ask my mom, she'll be like, he's not successful. He needs to work harder. He doesn't work hard. So,
It sounds like I need to get your mom on my podcast.
yes. That's true. But I think so. I think that they're very happy. They're very proud, especially the journey we have all taken. You know, they took their journey. They came from extremely poor background and they made their mark. And I think for me, leaving and getting into the institutions I got, the education, and I think the mentors played a huge role in my life.
Yeah, yeah,
To push me up. So
yeah. Well,
yeah.
that's awesome. Well, Raj, this has been a fascinating conversation. I really appreciate your taking the time and sharing your story, your journey, your practice, and congratulations on the success of your dream firm.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much.
This is Richard Hsu and Raj Rana. Thanks.